uploaded. So today we're gonna do a weird ass tier list, kind of a nerdy one, and I'll try to explain what I'm about to do. So there's been some talk online lately about, like, performance in gaming, games coming out and not really optimized and stuff like that, and how that kind of aspect of game design actually influences stuff like game reviews or the actual enjoyment of these games from people, from players, right? So what I want to do is just try to break down which aspect of game design actually does impact your enjoyment of these games. And the way that I wanted to do is that so I try to break apart some of the most important stuff that actually make up a video game. I didn't go too much in details. I didn't drill down into those too much because I wanted to keep it like at a higher level. I drilled down on some of those just because I think that some of these lower level aspects of game design may have a very different impact from one another, but mainly I stayed on a higher level. And what I'm gonna do is try to basically do a tier list of these game design aspects, and this is my scale, alright? So I'll try to explain my scale, my evaluation scale. So starting at the bottom, alright? So doesn't really impact gaming experience. So this tier is basically like the lowest of tiers for this, and I don't think some of these may actually go in there, but we'll see, because I didn't prepare how I wanted to make up the tier list. I just prepared the template on tier maker. But I didn't think through already where each and every aspect of the game design will go into the tier list. I just laid out the structure because I wanted to do it live, and I want to try to explain my thought process during the tier list. So after that is mildly impacts experience. So maybe there are some aspects that could or could not have an impact on the enjoyment of the game. We'll see about that. Then it gets a little bit trickier because here in the mid tier I place something which could be controversial, actually, because I place something that is called subjectively impacts the experience. So this is very hard to define, but I'll try to define what subjectively implies, right? And usually it implies something that cannot be scientifically measured. So this is the usual definition of something that is subjective, but it's really hard, especially when it comes to something like game design, which has both science and art at its core, and it's very, very difficult to break those two souls apart, right? And then there is objectively impacts experience. So this implies that aspects that will go in there can be measured some way or another, all right? And then we stay on the objectively impacts. So this is a top tier, but it does so very, very much. So in my opinion, on this tier that we will place aspect of design that really, really do impact your enjoyment of a video game, right? Your experience. And I think some of you might know what I'm thinking about when I see it, when I look at this top tier here. But even though I'm talking about objective like evaluation of these things. Sometimes subjective like taste can get in the way of this kind of evaluation, right? So I'm trying my best to be as objective as I possibly can. Of course, there is a new tool here in the on Tier Maker, which is really cool, and I want to get like real nerdy with this, and it's this alignment chart, which is really cool, and this will be very helpful for me and for us to place this aspect of game design on this table, right? And the axes are measurable against unmeasurable. So if any of these aspects can be measured in some ways scientifically, and can be like have a number associated with them, right? And the other axis is if this aspect is game genre dependent or not, which is also a very important thing when it comes to evaluating a design aspect for a video game, because in some kinds of video games, some design aspects are more important or more prevalent than in other genres, right? So I probably will start with this, just because if we understand where each of those aspects are placed in this table, it's probably easier to get to why I will place them on a tier compared to another tier, for example, right? So let's get nerdy, and let's start with the alignment chart. So I'll just pick them in the order that I'm seeing right now, which is the order I'm loaded them as images. Okay, so art style. Of course, art style is something that's really subjective most of the time. There's an argument to be made about quality of the art, which can be somehow a little bit more objective than you can think, but usually it's a preference thing, right? You may like something that is very realistic, you may like something that is really stylized, you may like something that is styled in such a way that it really bothers other people. So for example, I don't like the art style of South Park, for example. It doesn't mean that South Park is a bad art style, right? It's something, somebody likes it, somebody doesn't. So I don't, for example. So art style, is it genre dependent? I don't think so. I don't think that the genre of the game some genre of games can be benefit less than others from a good or a likable art style. So I'm gonna say it's genre independent. Is it measurable? I don't think so. It's very, very subjective. So I'm gonna place it somewhere here. Right. Okay. Control design. What do I mean by controls design? I mean the way controls, so how you interact with the game, are designed, and how the players perceive them. So how does it feel to play the game? Does it feel good? Does it feel responsive? Does it feel snappy? Does it feel as something that does what you mean to do when you use your controller or your keyboard or whatever it is that you're using to control the game? So this is an argument this is a theme that is really near and dear to my heart, because it's something that I really look at when I'm evaluating my games. So I have very limited amount of times to game nowadays, so I'm very picky about stuff, and this is one of the aspects that I really am very, very picky on, because if a game doesn't feel right, doesn't feel comfortable, doesn't feel pleasurable for me to doesn't feel right when I'm playing, I don't usually bother going on in playing them, right? So is it genre dependent? It can be. I think it's not For me personally, is not, but this is very subjective. Because even though, I don't know, even if you have something like point and click adventure, or something maybe I don't know, something that you can interact with just by tapping on a touch screen and stuff, I feel that usually you can feel the difference between very good design, control design, and very bad control design, no matter what's the input device that you're using, and no matter what the genre of game you're playing. But compared probably to art style, I would say it's a little bit less genre independent. So it's a little bit more genre dependent, right? So I want to place it as far as the x-axis goes, somewhere here in the middle, maybe. Yeah. So is it measurable? Is it measurable? Good question. Sometimes it is. But the things that are measurable about controls design are very often tied to performance. All right, very often are tied to performance, because performance can either enhance or make worse your controls, right? The feel of your controls. But we are talking about controls design, so the aspect of controls that can be driven by designers and the way they design the controls, right? So I want to say is not really measurable. It is more measurable than art style, just because you can do some kind of qualitative measurement, something like you can do a survey, you can do a focus group, you can do something talking to people that try the game, do a beta test or something like that, and you can gather information enough that you can tell if how much the controls are feeling, how much the control feel right. But it is a difficult thing to measure, so I would say, and it is not very scientific. So I want to place it here, somewhere here, maybe right in the middle. I'm not so comfortable placing like below the middle for the measurable thing, because there are some aspects that you can actually measure, like dead zones on the controllers, how much acceleration you have for your camera movement or for your character movement, how much time it takes for your character, for example, to switch direction and stuff like that. There are some aspects of it that can be actually measured, so I want to place it right in the middle. So gameplay design. Okay, so this is a big one, of course, and it contains many more aspects of like the game design at large. For example, level design, that is right after that. It is actually something that can be placed inside gameplay design. Can, but I wanted to keep level design separate, just because it's such a big aspect sometimes that can influence the experience on a much bigger like scale than it can like appear to be, right? So let's stick with gameplay design. Gameplay design is actually, of course, very, very central to game design. And is it measurable? Not really. Not in a quantitative way. You can measure it, maybe, as I said before, for control design, probably you can measure it on a qualitative scale, like talking to people that try the game, but it is very difficult to measure. That's because some player can find a gameplay loop fun, and some other players can find the same gameplay loop very very boring, right? And it just goes probably with like genre taste. For example, I don't like RTS, for example. RTS game, I don't like RTSs, and something like Age of Empires, for me, it's boring. But I don't think it's boring like in an absolute way. There are some players that love that gameplay loop, so it is very subjective, right? So I want to place it down here, And is it genre dependent? No, no way in hell it's not, because good gameplay design, it's relative to its own game genre, of course, but it, as a concept, is not genre dependent. So I want to place it here. Yeah. I don't know. They are kind of in the same spot, gameplay design and art style. I don't know what's maybe gameplay design is less independent, but both are really difficult to measure. Probably gameplay design is a little bit easier to measure than art style, so I want to place it here. All right, it's shaping up. Okay, level design. So as I was saying, it is part of gameplay design, but as is its own rule, because sometimes you can have a really nice gameplay loop, but really bad level design. And a very nice example of this is probably every Team Ninja action game. So maybe not every Team Ninja action game, but like the Neo series, and also more recently Wolong. It's a perfect example of having a good gameplay design, because the combat is great, the loop is cool, it doesn't get really boring actually, but the level design is just uninspired, right? And that's something that can be said about some games. So it is a different thing. We can place it in a different area of the graph. The only thing is how measurable it is. It's very difficult to measure. Is it genre independent? I don't think. I think it is independent, just because level design means different things in different kind of games, right? Because you can say to me, well, Accent, but open world game don't actually have levels. Yeah, it's somewhat true, but open world games do not have a level, like a classic level structure, but the areas of the open world where you go and do a mission, an objective or something like that, it is also considered like level design, right? So there is level design in every game, in some shape or form. So it is genre independent. How measurable it is? Fuck. It is very difficult to measure, but I feel it is in some way measurable. I don't know how actually. I will think about that while we're doing more of the tier list, but it is somewhat genre. It is somewhat measurable, in my opinion. There are some cases in which you can. So there is sometimes you can see objectively bad level design. For example, if you see a level that it's a flat square, right? It's a flat square. There's no elevation. There's no point of interest. There's no nothing. It's an empty level and it's just pure gameplay, for example. I don't think that can be subjective in any ways. But let's place set. Damn it, English. Right here, right in the middle. Performance. Oh my lord. Mamma mia, le performance. So performance this is the hot topic of the night and of the past couple of years in gaming. I would say is obviously these are extremely measurable. Probably the most measurable thing in here. So it goes straight to the top so this is the controversy, right? Is performance genre dependent or not? And this could seem to you that is a subjective choice of mine, but I don't think this is subjective at all. And I explained that at length when we go on the other side and do the tier list. But for the time being, I would just say that I will place this thing in the top right corner right there, because performance are both measurable and very genre independent in my opinion. I'll explain myself later, but it is, of course, this is not black and white. It is, there are some like shades of this sentence, of my thought about this, and I will explain them later. So for the time being, this is straight to the top right of the corner of the graph. Sound design. Oh my lord, this is another thing. So as you can see, I split soundtrack and sound design into different areas of game design, because that's actually very important to establish, right? Soundtrack, it's like the music, right? The music you're listening to while playing. It can be in an integral part of the gaming experience sometimes, but it's very rare. And usually it's just like something that elevates the experience by complementing what's happening on the screen, right? Sound design, instead, the word design, it's very telling here. It's something that actually goes more hand-to-hand with UX design, that it goes hand-to-hand with the soundtrack. So sound designs are all the little sounds, the noises made by game objects and like NPCs and what have you in the game, right? Also sound that the game makes to make you understand things, like when you move a cursor over something that it's interactable, when you use your D-pad with the controller inside the menu, and you hear the noise of like every option scrolling and so on. So sound design is actually a big part of UX design. So UX design is actually a big container here, but I wanted to break that down in this way because I think it makes more sense for what I'm about to do. So sound design, it's weirdly measurable. Maybe I'll place it a little bit above the middle line here. It is measurable in some ways, because you can tell when the sounds, like with scientific methods, you can tell when sounds are audible for most people. You can tell when they cut through the mix of the entire soundscape of a game. There are techniques with which you can measure actually sound design, right? So it is measurable. Maybe it's not that obvious, but it is measurable. How genre dependent it is? Not at all. Straight to the right. Sound design is always useful, and it is always an integral part of the user experience, right, in gaming. So, especially in gaming, because there are many other software experiences that benefit from sound design but don't really depend on it. Game design is one of those that really hardly depend on it, especially when you talk about something like accessibility features and stuff. Soundtrack, as I was telling, very immeasurable. Extremely immeasurable. I can like a song, you cannot like the same song. It's a taste thing. An argument can be made about a soundtrack being fitting to the atmosphere of a game or not, but also that I think is subjective, because you can have, I don't know, for example, medieval themed game, and in which you expect maybe to have a medieval themed music. Instead you could have a hard rock music in a medieval themed game, and even if could maybe not work on paper, maybe it works very well because it's an action game, because of how the action it's conveyed throughout the cutscenes and stuff and gameplay. So maybe it works, So it is super subjective and unmeasurable at that. And it is genre dependent. It's not genre dependent at all. So this goes straight up here. Straight down here in the bottom right corner, right along with art style, I would say. It's kind of the same. It's kind of the same level, I would say, even though art style can easily be like critiqued as not being fitting to the game, right? It's a easier thing to criticize, just because eyesight is something that most people are proficient at. Basically, it's very different. And people usually are more vocal about expressing their thoughts about art style than they are about soundtrack. But it's kind of the same. I would say it's kind of the same level playing. I would consider them very close in this chart. Storytelling. Oh my lord. Storytelling is another difficult one, because it's actually so. I would say it is extremely genre dependent, just because there are games in which there isn't any storytelling. So just because of that this doesn't mean that it isn't important, right? It is just that depending on the game can be existent or not, or can have an impact or not. You can take a game that doesn't need storytelling and apply some storytelling to it, and maybe it can do something good for it, right? But it is extremely genre dependent. Sometimes if you don't have storytelling, you cannot just say that a game is bad because it doesn't have it, or because it's bad, right? Sometimes storytelling is bad in a game, but it's a good game because the game doesn't actually need good storytelling, right? In my opinion, it is genre dependent. But is it measurable? It depends. You can say it measurable if maybe you can consider a measure like review scores specifically for storytelling in a game. Maybe I don't know, maybe scores applied by writers or like storytelling experts that say this game has bad story, it is told in a bad way, it doesn't have the right rhythm to it, it's boring, character development sucks, whatever it may be. I think, in my opinion, it is not measurable, because as art and sound and as art and music go, storytelling is very subjective. There are some things that people find boring and not well told that other people find actually good. So I'm actually gonna place it here. Maybe not as measurable as soundtrack. Yeah, why not? It's the same thing. It's art. Storytelling, it's art. As it's art, the visual art and soundtrack, And gameplay, to an extent, it's also art, in my opinion. It's not very scientific. What's fun and what's not fun, it's not really scientific, in my opinion. So, UX design, my job. I should know where this goes, right? So UX design, even though it's very measurable, usually measuring techniques for UX design are not quantifiable, with numbers. You can use numbers to express something that, some aspect of a study that you can make to understand if the UX design is good, and it comes from qualitative tests with the user tests and stuff like that. So you can measure in that way. You can also have quantitative measures of UX, actually, which do not translate directly into a UX design issue or praise, but can be used to understand user behaviors and then correct the design to avoid some things. So I would say it is very measurable, not as measurable maybe as performance, but very measurable. And it is genre dependent. It's not genre dependent, not in the slightest. UX has to be good for every type of game. So, as I was saying, it's very similar to sound design. Actually, sound design is part of the UX design. So these two go hand in hand, I would say. Very close to each other. Probably on the same spot. I would just like place them like this so you can read them. But they are basically the same thing. And last but not least, visual fidelity. Visual fidelity is something that is very controversial in my opinion, because some people that I know personally consider visual fidelity to be very important for their enjoyment of games. Usually these people are people that are very interested in the technical aspect of games, like, and also maybe like DIY computer builders and stuff like that. So people that really want to see like the big stuff, the post processing, the poly count, the lighting, the ray tracing, the whatever, the like high quality textures and stuff like that. So how much that is measured? Very measurable actually, because you can say that something like what it's called, the website that does the tests usually test performance, but they also do a very good analysis on visual fidelity. Digital Foundry, right? Digital Foundry does actually measures in a very efficient way and a very like objective way the visual fidelity of games, right? They count the pixels, they see how jagged are the shadows, they see how blurry the image is, how the texture like scale when you get close to a surface and stuff like that. So it is very measurable. Is it genre dependent? This is a tough one. I will place it right in the middle. And reason being that you can make the case for visual fidelity to be a thing that pushes most genres of gaming. You can do whatever type of game in with very expensive looking visuals, right? That doesn't make the game better or worse in any shape or form, in my opinion. So it is probably is genre independent, but I want to place it in the middle because it can be, because if you, for example, if you do a World War shooter or something, in that case it can influence your enjoyment of the game, and in that case it can be more important than in other like kind of games, like in a card game, for example, right? In a TCG game, right? Okay, so we got our alignment chart done. Take a good look, make a screenshot if you want. I don't know how much you are like agreeing with me in this, but I think this is important, like groundwork for what we are about to do next. So let's go and try to make this damn nerdiest tier list of them all. Okay. Right. First thing first, I wanna move performance to the last spot, just because it's a very important thing that I wanna talk about, and I wanna do it for last. Wanna keep it for last. So let's take it from the top. Art style. As we said, it is genre independent and it is not really measurable. So, but as far as how much it impacts your enjoyment of the game, I would say it's very high. So immediately my mind goes to this. So it can impact your enjoyment of the game and your actual gaming experience, but it's very subjective, right? You can have a very good game in every aspect and have an art style that just doesn't work with somebody. Okay, so I think it's fair to place it in the middle. Game controls, the controls design. So here we go. Let's start with something serious here. We said it is somewhat measurable, okay? And we said that it is not actually genre dependent. So it is very, in my opinion, it is a very objective way of measuring the quality of a game. So my mind immediately goes to the top tiers here. The way a game feels when you play it, it's extremely important. There are some genres in which you could say whatever, right? For example, I don't know, you play let's take a great game as an example. For example, Persona 5, right? Persona 5 doesn't need to actually have super good controls, especially when it comes to like moving your character throughout the levels and stuff, even though there are some like places in which you have to sneak in places without being like saw by enemies and stuff like that. So it actually like controls do matter in those instances, but usually you just need to select your attacks and push a button, right? But even that, it's something that can be can feel good or not, right? Even moving through menus can feel bad if your controls are not done right. If there's I don't know, a bunch of latency from the moment you actually input a direction and something happens on the screen. So I would say it is not genre dependent. So it is very, and it is manageable. So it is actually very objective. I would place it here for the time being. Maybe, yeah. If I would place it on the top, probably would like seem very subjective because I'm very fixated with this one. But at the very least, it has to be here on the second tier from the top. So let's go ahead and go on gameplay design. This is a very tough one for me because if it was for me, the way I made this makes it very hard to place it on top. All right, because it's very difficult to measure gameplay. The fun, because gameplay is actually, you can translate gameplay design in like the fun factor of a game, right? You can argue that gameplay design could be smart or dumb or complex or very simple. The fact is, you can have a very simple gameplay loop which is very, very fun, which means that it's a good gameplay loop. That's just the way it is. So I would say it's very subjective, and I would place it here right alongside the art style. So for the time being, I will not like order this from the most impactful and to the least impactful. But yeah, let's do that. Let's do that without like getting back to everything and reposition everything. Let's place gameplay design before art style, because in my opinion, it is more important in your experience than art style. It cannot be based on the type of gamer you are, but like on average, I would say gameplay design is probably the most important subjective matter in a game. Okay, level design. As I was saying before, very similar to gameplay design. It goes toe to toe with it. I would just, but it's not very subject. It's less subjective, I would say, and it may count for some people more than for others. because there are some people that are taught to, for example, that played Neo, right? They didn't even bother looking at the level design. The level design, they didn't even like phase them, because they were just focusing on the gameplay. This is very hard, actually. I was thinking, yeah, you're seeing that I was not prepared. I'm just like spitballing this right in the moment, because it is hard. Level design is hard, because for what I've said so far, I would have to place it here in the mildly impact your experience, right? Because it's probably less subjective than gameplay, probably, just because I think you can evaluate it a little bit better. But no, it's hard. I probably have to move it here, because in some cases it's very, very, very impactful, and also subjectively so. Yeah, it's very hard for me to do this. In che casino mi sono messo? Okay, right. Let's not think about it too much, because either way, if I think too much about it, my brain's just gonna explode on stream. All right, sound design. Okay, sound design. This is very objective, because as I was saying before, it's very measurable. How much does it impact the game experience? Very much so, in my opinion. Imagine a game where you hit an enemy and it doesn't make any noise, right? And the sound doesn't tell you what's happening. Imagine you're blind and something happens like that, right? Of course, you can be also deaf, in which case visuals wouldn't matter to you, and sound would be more important. But on average, like let's say on average, the average gamer, which has ears, functional ears and functional eyes, right? I don't want to be in any way, shape, or form like dismissive of people with visual and hearing impairments. That's not my point here. Absolutely not. On the other hand, sound design is very important for accessibility features, right? Same goes for UX design when we will reach that. So sound design, I think, goes at least up here. At the very least up here. All right. So one thing that I want to say about this is that for some people, subjective stuff can matter more than objective stuff. All right. So what I want to do is probably change something here. Because when I mean a lot, when I say a lot, I mean a lot. And I probably mean that can also impact the experience in a subjective way, right? But that's not fair, because this something. So these can be subjective. Actually, you can think that a sound like conveys an idea better than another, and I could think the opposite. So everything can be subjective, right? So let me rephrase that better. Any of these can be evaluated subjectively, but some of them can also be evaluated objectively. So I don't need to specify that. If I'm here or here, it doesn't mean that subjectively cannot impact your experience. It can also subjectively. So I think I thought the structure pretty thoroughly. It seems to be working in my head, at least. Hopefully it's working also for you. So soundtrack. Let's go on. Soundtrack. Super subjective stuff here. All right. How much? How important is it, right? Compared to these three. We got gameplay, level design, art style, soundtrack. If it was so, since this is a subjective matter, right? If it was me, I would almost play soundtrack before art style, almost. But if I really think about it, probably I can stand a somewhat meh soundtrack when I have a very compelling game art style wise. Sometimes it happens. So I would place it here. Sometimes art style, yeah, I'm guilty of this, as every person that actually has eyes. We tend to prioritize eyesight to hearing, you know. So probably is that, I don't know. And video games, are called video games for a reason. So art style probably is a little bit more important than soundtrack, but they're really close in impact. So let's go ahead. So storytelling. This is a weird one. This is very controversial. Could be very controversial, right? Because it's very, as we said before, dependent on the game genre, right? Extremely dependent on game genre. If you do Tetris, you don't need storytelling, right? So I could be inclined to place it here. Like the first one, I could, maybe the only one. I don't know if it's the only one, but it's the first one that I would place in mildly impact. And the mildly is not fair. It's not fair, because if you get a game that really relies on storytelling, it's not a mild thing. It's a very important thing, but it is subjective. Holy shit. Maybe we didn't need these two tiers, but it's all right. Yeah, having two empty tiers, it's very telling of what I'm trying to say here. That every aspect of game design is very important, right? So there's nothing that mildly or doesn't actually impact your gaming experience. It could be very important to have these two tiers empty, actually. Let's see. Let's place it here, but I'm not sure about the order. I don't know if you guys think that storytelling, I don't know, it's very genre dependent, but probably in the genre where the storytelling matters a lot, it's probably very important. It's probably right here in the middle. So there are different moments in which you evaluate a game, right? There's the first impact of the evaluation, which does not, of course, count the storytelling aspect of a game. Because when you see a trailer, for example, you get captured by the soundtrack, by the art style, by the animation, by the action, by the gameplay that is being shown. You can argue that there are story-driven gameplay, story-driven game trailers that you can try to evaluate somewhat the story, but it's not an actual evaluation. It's just like a sneak peek of what's going on in the game, right? So this is so difficult, this tier list. So for my kind of gaming, so my usual genre of gaming, I would say storytelling goes last here. Still very important, but on average, nowadays many games feature very prominent stories. So I would say it actually goes here, probably, because there can be a game with a somewhat meh art style and soundtrack that has a very compelling story, and it can be worth playing, right? If it is a story-driven game, right? Yeah. So these orders it really can be interchanged based on the game genre you're looking at. So I would say I would place it here, but it's easily interchangeable. So I may have to specify at the end of this that this tier, the order in which I place them is not important actually, right? These are all very important aspects of game design. Right, UX design, right? My job, back again. How important it is for you to enjoy, to be able to enjoy your games. Freaking important. Extremely important. Is it measurable? Yes, it is. I explained that before. If you weren't here, I will try to do it quickly. It's measurable because you can do user tests, you can do quantitative tests, you can do monitoring like analytics and stuff. You can do analytics in games. Believe it or not, you can do that. You can know how many players do the same mistakes over and over. Maybe I don't know, using the menus or stuff like that. So it is extremely measurable, and that means it is an objective matter. It can be subjective sometimes. There are some moments in specific games where bad user experience can turn into pretty good user experience just because you get used to that, right? But it doesn't mean that it's actually a good user experience. And I'll say that from like my actual job experience, right? I am a UX designer by trade, and I would say that. Let's make an example, right? Like a blatant example. Monster Hunter. Like a big, huge fucking game. Right now, it is very important. It sells a lot. It is one of the games like that everybody is playing, right? It is a freaking nightmare as far as user experience goes. And not only in the menus, like in the design of the menus, because somebody can think that user experience is only like menu design. That's not the case. User experience is the whole thing. It's how you transition from from doing one thing to doing the other thing. How difficult it is to do stuff like invite your friends to play together with you. How difficult it is to prepare for a mission, for example, in Monster Hunter. How much time you spend doing like chores to before actually getting into the games. Everything is basically baked into the UX design of them, right? So Monster Hunter has really bad UX, but you get used to it, like, because the other aspects of the game are so freaking good. Gameplay, the feel, whatever, like the visuals sometimes, not always the visuals, but sometimes that you forget or just like power through the bad user experience and get used to it, and then it becomes second nature to you. But that doesn't mean it's actually a good UX, right? So that being said, my rant being done, where do we put UX design here? I think we actually put UX design. Oh my god. Yeah. I am a UX designer, so I would actually put it here. But yeah, there are exceptions to the rules, right? And Monster Hunter is an exception, just because even though I could place UX design up here, you can say that games with bad UX can be like very successful. And I think that's true for every other aspect of game design. You can have a very successful game that does some of this very badly, right? Commercial success doesn't really reflect perfection in every aspect of game design. That's to be said. Of course, all of this helps a lot, right? Whatever. UX design. It should be right along with sound design, if I'm being honest. All right, and this would like be more in line with what I was saying about Monster Hunter, for example, right? Because it is impactful, but it's not so impactful that it can undermine the success of your game. All right. This is hard, man. This is very difficult. Okay, visual fidelity. Somebody's gonna kill me for this, but I think this actually goes here. And why is that? So I think visual fidelity mildly impacts gameplay experience. And there's a very specific reason for me to say this. For me, visual fidelity is something that really helps game developer to sell the game, and some very picky kind of gamer to enjoy that. Okay, so some gamers do enjoy a better visual fidelity game, right? A game that has very, very high-end visuals. And I do too. I enjoy them, but it's not instrumental for my enjoyment of games. I'm playing Ghostwire Tokyo. It's not like a very extremely good looking game if you go by numbers, right? It has a nice atmosphere, and I think it has like a nice visual identity, which is more akin to the art style than it is to visual fidelity, and so, but I don't think the fact that it is not like a visual spectacle hinders the game enjoyment for me. And this is the case for most of the games I play, right? I'm one of the people that say that something like, for example, Souls games need to be better at visual fidelity, right? In this day and age, they need to be better. Not just because I want them to be better, like they need to be on par with the rest of the big AAA games that are being created in this day and age, right? Just to be up there, you know. And of course, I enjoy nice visuals as far I enjoy nice visuals the same as everybody else. It's just that probably it is subjective, but I think it really doesn't count when you really evaluate the game, because there are so many games that have average visuals or even worse than average visuals that are really, really fun and successful. And Nintendo Switch is a pretty good example of that. Like, Switch games don't look good. They have a nice art style. Visual fidelity is not there. Even though that's the case, people play and love them. So, I think that visual fidelity can be an instrument sometimes to make a game experience better. I would say that games like Call of Duty, Battlefield, or whatever, in those games, visual fidelity, because those games are really they go for a realistic art style. Okay, in that case, visual fidelity actually does matter. Maybe it doesn't matter as far as like fun factor goes, but as far as, well, you can say that the spectacle of watching set pieces and stuff like that, it is part of the fun of a game, right? So I wouldn't say that visuals don't make fun. They can be a part of the fun. So yeah, this is more of a subjective matter for me, right? I think that on average, especially in this day and age where most of the innovation in game design has been made in small titles and indies that really don't risk stupid amounts of money, all right? So I would say the visual fidelity nowadays is not that important. Also, there's another argument to be made about visual fidelity not being so important, so impactful for your gaming experience, is that there are so many old games that are super bad visual that they're still hold up today and you can play and enjoy today. So that's another argument in favor of me putting this right here. I know people that would kill me for this. And I'm here for I'm here for my opinion, mine alone. Of course, people can disagree with me, and that's the fun of it, right? All right, we've come to the big one, the big argument that can then lead us to the next topic of this evening, and that's performance. Okay, performance. Le performance. That's not an Italian term, that one. I was just goofing around. Performance. We've said that they are the most measurable of them all. And of course you know exactly where I'm gonna put this, because up until now I said that these two probably could not matter. These two, the bottom two tiers could not be here, even because I could just put visual fidelity here, you know, and call it a day. I might even do this just because, as I was saying, is very subjective, right? But you know, this is my version. This is the official version, probably, okay, of the tier list. My version is here. So, but I left this spot alone for a specific purpose, and you know what it is. Performance are, and this is where people will kill me, really. In my opinion, the most important aspect of the game. Not the most important aspect of how a game is designed, but it's the thing that most impacts your enjoyment of a game. At least my enjoyment of a game. But I'd say this. I say it might, and it can be, like, look subjective, but I think this is so much measurable that it has to be here. And let me explain my thought process. I already talked about this in a previous video when we talked about the whole 30 frames per second Redfall fiasco. So there has been another fiasco that really obfuscated the 30 frames per second stuff. So it's always again for Redfall, but that's a different topic for another day. Why is performance so important, so impactful on your gaming experience? More than anything else, that's because you can do every one of these in the most cool, inventive, precise, scientific, subjectively enjoyable way. But if your performance are bad, everything else gets bad. You are not able to experience everything I'm seeing here, every one of these aspects of the game properly. This thing, performance, will destroy your good design in every other aspect. You will not feel your control design the way it's supposed to feel. You will not navigate and do your stuff as easily. You can even have problem in sound, because performance is not all about visuals. It can be also impacting sound. It does change the way you experience the gameplay and the level design. Probably storytelling is the only thing that doesn't get really changed by the performance, you know. But if you are not enjoying everything apart from the storytelling, I don't think you're enjoying the storytelling anyway. So, like, by osmosis, this gets also impacted. The art style is not just still images of your game. It's also the animation. The animation are very impacted from performance. Soundtrack probably also like storytelling, even though it can be like it can have performance issues also. But like let's say in an ideal situation that sound doesn't get impacted from performance, you're not gonna enjoy your sound in a game that doesn't perform well, because you're gonna be thinking about everything else that doesn't work, you know. And of course, visual fidelity gets impacted by performance, and in this case, actually, also performance get impacted by visual fidelity. So these two are so interconnected, and it's so weird that I place them at the opposite end of the spectrum, right? But this is probably telling us something. I don't know. Maybe we can read into it something. But performance impact every other aspect of the game. When people say, I don't care about frame rate, or frame pacing, or stuttering, or I don't see screen tearing, they're either liars or they're never experienced better, right? That's the only reason a gamer that really enjoys this medium that we all like. It's the only reason a person can say something like, I don't care about performance. The only thing. Because if you do have the possibility of trying a game that really performs well on any platform, I don't know, even on Switch, there are some games that really perform well. I don't know, Mario Kart single player only, because when you go in split screen mode, it like performance tanks. But you know, for example, single player Mario Kart, it really does perform well on the Switch. If you have tried that, it goes at 60 frame, like pretty steady 60 frames per second. It's not the best, but it is very serviceable. If you play that and then you play Zelda, for example, on the same platform, and it goes to 27 frames per second on average, it's impossible for anybody who has eyes and hands also, because it's not just a matter of visuals, as I was saying before, because control feeling gets really impacted by performance. So if you experience some game that has really like good performance, and then you go back to something like Zelda or whatever, like very difficult game to run on something very not so powerful as a Switch, you'll definitely be able to see the difference, right? And you know that performance is important to enjoy the game. It's not just important, it's like fundamental. How does performance impact everything? Control design. It can add latency to your controls. The game can feel less responsive. You can even miss inputs if your performance is really bad. If you get stuttering, if you get bad frame pacing, you will lose actual inputs, or you will get it like some frame later. It's really, really bad. This gets really impacted by performance. UX design, same thing. Because UX, as I was saying, it's not only on the menus. You can also have performance issue in the menus of a game, but UX design is also how you go from one place to another. Are you like go from one area of the game to another area of the game, and you have to wait for it to load, and you have to maybe do some stuff before you have to watch a cutscene every time, right? Performance hinder that kind of experience. Absolutely does. Sound design. There are games that are really badly optimized that have sound glitches, and it's really bad because sound design actually helps you with feedbacks when you do stuff in a game. Gameplay design. If you're playing a shooter, so let's be clear about this. For me, is actually not game genre dependent. Every game suffers from bad performance. I play freaking Legends of Runeterra on my phone, and when it loses frames, I get mad because sometimes the cards don't animate properly. I place the card on the board, and something weird happens because there's lag when I'm dragging the card onto the board, and sometimes the card goes back to my hand instead of like being played and stuff like that. And that's a performance issue. So performance is not game genre dependent. Bad performance always hinder your enjoyment of a video game. That's no two ways about it. As I was level design, same thing. You can have the best level design ever, and then you try to traverse your level, and you get a stutter, and you miss your jump, and you can say it's fault of the level design. No, it's not. So level design gets impacted. Storytelling, maybe not, but everything else does. So, art style, yes. Some art styles go toe-to-toe with fluidity of animation, for example. Some art styles look much, much better at high frame rates. Probably all of the art styles, apart from something that can, emulate comics or emulate animes or emulate whatever, right? Can emulate something that actually has low frame rates. But performance is not just frame rate. It's not just frame rate. Performance is also latency. It's stuttering. It's consistency of frame rate. It's everything else. Soundtrack, same thing. It's not really impacted. It can be if there are some sound glitches or something like that, but it's not really impacted. But it can be. But as I was saying, how many are those? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 out of 9 aspects of game design are hindered from performance. You're not gonna be able to enjoy the 2 that don't get impacted by it. So this is I think I made a really good case for performance being the only one up here, right? I don't know if you guys agree with me, but challenge my ideas. Say something on the chat. Say something on YouTube comments when I upload this video. To do it. I wanna be able to enjoy discussion with people about this because this is very important to me. So this is the tier list. We've done it. We managed to do it. This is it. I'm really torn between placing this here or here, but I want to be true to myself. Since going down the stairs here, you get more subjective. So I will place it here. For me, visual fidelity is probably on average less important than everything else I've seen here. All right. So what's next?